And welcome back to Spiritual Strength. Today we have Mary Jane Zuzolo, who's back as a guest. Thank you for joining us.
It's great to be here. Thank you, Gene.
Absolutely. So, real excited about your new book. Can you talk to us about that a little bit?
Sure. Yes, it's been a few years in progress, and finally got it wrapped up, and it should be out March 19th with Sophia Institute Press, and the pre-order is available now. The Sophia link will be live for that in about a week, but it's already on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and those kinds of places.
Excellent. And what led you to write the book?
Well, I think, going back a few years ago, I was beginning to notice what I think a lot of people have noticed in the last 2 or 3 years, that uh, the devotion has so much relevance for our times, and yet so few seem to know about it. And that was kind of perplexing. The relevance that I think many of us are starting to appreciate is that a main thrust in the devotion is its use as spiritual armament in the defeat of communism, which unfortunately is manifesting in our faces like never before. I think maybe that's part of the reason that the devotion wasn't tapped into, say 10 years ago even. I think people just didn't see communism as a threat that was going to impact them directly. And, related to communism, just like in Fatima, the errors of Russia, so to speak, aren't just limited to communism. They are really tied with modernism and, any socioeconomic system like socialism, or any ideology, modernism, the postmodernisms that, have as their objective sort of the replacement of God's authority regarding truth and morality with the contrivings of men. And I think this kind of began with the Enlightenment and rationalism, where man was deciding that he could have a say in truth and morality by way of his reason or his argumentation. And then that led, uh, through a progression, we'll call it progression, digression, I guess, to modernism that allows also for a man to decide truth and morality based even on his own feelings. And then now we have moral relativism, in which everybody's trying to decide their own truth and morality, so that there is no one truth, but multiple truths. And finally, I guess you could say wokeism. I'm not sure how much of any truth or morality is identified with that ideology. But all these things are an extreme offense to God because they are infringing upon his authority. And so I guess you could say that what we are experiencing is kind of a result of our collective choices. And I know one of my favorite things that Father Carney mentions in his book, The Secret of the Holy Face, is that just like in the Old Testament, man's irreverence and blasphemy and idolatry are grave offenses to God. And the effects of that, if they're just naturally, if God allows them to take place, is the removal of religion. And, I'm sort of paraphrasing there, but we need reparation to turn God's face back to us, so to speak, and to receive his blessing again. And so in the devotion, the primary objective is sort of twofold: the appeasement of God and mercy for man. And, in terms of why this devotion is not more known at this time, I think, there's probably many reasons. I know other devotions did take their time in getting up and running, but this is curious because it was enormously popular for, say, the first 70 years or so. And then the last 70 years, maybe it's fallen into obscurity, I guess you could say. But about the time that the devotion was approved by Leo the 13th, he did have that vision of Christ being challenged by Satan, that if Satan was given more power over those under his authority and say 100 years, that he could defeat the church or conquer the church. And um, Christ did grant him that challenge. And it is interesting that Leo the 13th approved this devotion for the whole world within the year, and within 2 months he had approved the first confraternity of the Holy Face. And then in the devotion too, Christ says a number of times that Satan would do everything in his power to stamp out the devotion. And so I think these are some of the reasons why it's gone through this phase. But thankfully, in the last couple of years especially, I think it's sort of exploded on the internet, and people are becoming more aware of it. Sorry I hope I'm not making this answer too long, but the thing that I then discovered as I researched more to write the book was that really it is a deep spirituality of atonement that's kind of in lines with very much in line with Saint Therese and the whole Carmelite mystical tradition. I remember reading that Saint Therese had a dream of Saint Anne, who was a very good friend of both John of the Cross and Teresa of Avila. And in the dream, Saint Anne said, something to the fact that your spirituality is very much in line with the Carmelite tradition. And Sister Saint Pierre, well, I should say I call her that because that's what her sisters in Carmel called her. I'm referring to Sister Marie de Saint Pierre, or in the United States, a lot of people refer to her as Sister Mary of St. Peter. But anyway, Sister St. Pierre had a vision of Teresa of Avila telling her that the devotion was the honor of Carmel. And I think that's very significant, because Carmel now, especially in hindsight, has a number of doctors of the church and, of course, saints. And we just now have Elizabeth of the Trinity to add to that. So a lot of the devotion, I think, in terms of a spirituality, is better understood in hindsight, obviously with the benefit of Saint Therese and her spirituality, but also Saint Montfort, Saint Louis de Montfort, and maybe I'll get into that just a little bit, but also the successive approved apparitions of Mary, most notably Fatima, but there were quite a few that have taken place after the Holy Face devotion, and other devotions as well. We now have the Holy Face devotion as revealed to Blessed Purina, and the Divine Mercy devotion. There's others, I suppose, but those are the two most famous. And so all these work together to give kind of the mystical context of the devotion. And I think that we can realize that we're living not just in an ungodly world, but an anti-God world. And we are realizing the effects of neglecting the devotion, and also the necessity of it as a remedy. And so, the book is designed to be kind of a reintroduction to the third millennium of this, efficacious means that's been given to us by God to do our part in helping to reclaim in Christ, for Christ, all. And in the process, it is supposed to be a very selfless process. We do, however, gain blessings for ourselves. And so, it complements Fatima. It's a battle plan to assist Our Lady and the defeat of Satan, and and then capping, some understanding of the Carmelite mystics. It's a valuable aid in our own salvation as well.
Yeah, it's the first thing we have to look at is it's all coming from heaven. So it's all coming from one source. So you wouldn't want to tune out any of the source. You want to listen, because it's painting a picture. God is the master artist who is painting this picture for us. And as you said, with the explosion of now the Holy Face, the Message of Fatima, and of course all approved apparitions, Divine Mercy, and such, we they're telling a picture together. It's all coming from one source, and where sin abounds, grace abounds all the more. So that's why I think we're seeing that explosion, because obviously, like you said, with moral relativism and obviously the errors of Russia and communism still spreading, whether it be in the college textbooks, in the government, really
Mhm,
all areas in our thinking that we're not even aware of because we were born and bred into it. So
mhm.
it's we need to, we just got to be aware of it. We got to listen to Heaven's call. Can you unpack the title of the book for the viewers? Unveiling the Sixth Station of the Cross: Reparations to the Holy Face, Mother of all Devotions.
Sure. Well, I guess we could just take it piece by piece. The unveiling of the sixth station of the cross. You know, I think most people are aware of the way of the cross. A devotion meant to help people to meditate on Christ's passion, and it has the 14 stations, and uh, the sixth station commemorates the valiant and compassionate woman who braved the crowd and the soldiers, and just for a moment was able to console Christ's face by wiping his face with her veil. And in return, he imprinted upon the veil his exact likeness. And so, I guess to explain her name too, that's why we've referred to her as Veronica, meaning true icon. And it's not necessarily her exact name, but this action of her offering in merciful love, this consolation, and then a return of merciful love through the imprint of the likeness, that kind of is the essence of the devotion. Merciful love, again, that ties with, it's a term that Saint Therese uses a lot. Um, it's the veil is also reminiscent of, kind of, I'll call them veiled treasures or secrets of the Holy Face. I think that was a term that people have attributed to Saint Therese. Um, but it's, they're just kind of aids in being able to go further down the road, in trying to contemplate God, and ultimately, toward union with God. Um, and as far as the injuries to Christ's face go, the blasphemies that we currently are um, are performing, they are in a sense aimed at the divinity, but they fall back, so to speak, onto the face of Christ, and they renew his image or his injuries. And so that's why he asks repeatedly in the Revelations for Veronica's to console his face, and he's wanting all of us to act as Veronica's through these acts of reparation. And when we do so, he looks upon us with the same, quote, complacent eyes as he did Veronica. And he does, I guess, give great promises. But again, these are supposed to be selfless acts. And I guess the most notable in terms of the veil is that, just like Veronica received the imprint of Christ's face upon her veil for her act of kindness, we receive for our acts of reparation the imprint of Christ's likeness in proportion to the acts that we give in consolation, these acts of reparation. And Christ reveals this as this exchange as the greatest source of grace, second to the sacraments. And so it is a very powerful exchange. And we the next part of the title, Reparation to the Holy Face, uh, in the Revelations, the Holy Face of Christ, the wounded face, represents three things. It represents, of course, like the redemptive suffering of Christ during the Passion to save us from our sins. It represents the face of the church or its doctrine. And most importantly, it represents the divine Trinity, the Godhead itself. Um, and again, we're talking about current sins of blasphemy, and this is what renews the injuries to the face. And we are to, appease justice and draw down mercy by offering the merits and love that are sort of encased in the wounded face of Christ to the Father. So we're not offering our own merits and love per se, but those of Christ. And so it's really like an offering of God to God. Uh, and that mirrors the consecration in which uh, Christ makes himself available as a perfect offering to the Father. And it is actually through the Sacred Heart that this these offerings are made. And so, in that way too, it's sort of a mirror. And it's even, I guess, as part of that, an extension of the redemption. It's a new work for those new crimes, and it's an offering again of the head for the mystical body. And so we're combining the power of God with the cooperation of man. And as far as mother of all devotions goes, that term or that phrase kind of came to me early on as it's the vernacular, mother of all such and such, meaning kind of a preemptive category. And the Holy Face devotion is singular. It's really the only one that makes reparation to the Godhead in this particular way, specifically for the first three commandments. And it's not to necessarily make reparation for the other seven. It's just the first three that have to do with the rights of God. And again, it's properly made through the Sacred Heart, and it's the Sacred Heart's greatest consolation and honor. This is talked about in the Revelations. Um, it's a spiritual armament for these unparalleled times of iniquity. That's a quote by Christ. It's not something that we're all just assuming. And it does set forth very distinctly the pattern of atonement or reparation first, just like in the redemption, which is actually also the case for the Divine Mercy devotion, which is very complementary to it. And so for all these reasons, and it's got sort of unparalleled miracles and promises. And per the words of Christ himself, he referred to this devotion as the miraculous wine served at the end of the wedding feast at Cana, and talked about the others as the common wine. But again, they're all work together, just like you're saying, and they're needed to cover all the bases. And they're very beautiful, and it's kind of like a mosaic when they're worked together. But finally, this devotion was given through Our Lady at the Christ requested that she have this honor, and she was given a new title, Our Lady of the Holy Name of God. And in the revelations and the mystical experiences of Sister St. Pierre, it's made clear that all the graces flowing through the devotion do come through Mary. And so for this reason too, and Mary as mercy is the link in all devotions. So that reason too, it's mother of all devotions. It takes on dual meaning.
Yeah, it's like what I was thinking as you were speaking, that it's like the son gives birth to the mother, then the mother gives birth to the son, and the son gives birth back to the mother. It's like God created Mary, of course, and then Mary brings Christ into the world. And then, as you see with this, with the Holy Face devotion as the precursor to Fatima, it's like the Holy Face devotion then births the mother back. So it's like from the son to the mother, from the mother to the son, and then from the son again to the mother. It's this wonderful interplay of self gift where you just see the two not feeding off each other, but the mother points you to the son, and the son points you to the mother. I mean, it ultimately is all pointed to God, but it's just great. And then how that catalyst of the Holy Face brings us then to that culmination of the miracle of the Son in Fatima, and it's all fighting the same thing, this demonic and modernism and all this.
Mm.
Okay. So you mentioned the spirituality of the Holy Face devotion was in line with that of Saint Therese. Could you outline that for us, please?
Sure. You know, I kind of set up in the book that the spiritualities of both the Saint Therese and Sister Saint Pierre, they uh, they have the Holy Face as the center of their own spirituality, but also as a tool in the salvation of their brethren. And you know, the Holy Face wasn't initially revealed to Sister Saint Pierre. It was kind of like a progression, but it was the uh, the main focal point for the Holy Face devotion. And you know, so she slowly was taught how to embrace the Holy Face in her own spiritual life and to use it as a tool in making reparation for others. She was in fact even asked by Christ uh, to use his merits and love as in his face in the salvation of France. She was made responsible for the sins of France. So that's kind of an amazing thing. Um, and then, you know, with Saint Therese, I think that she, you know, really contemplated on the Holy Face to the point of she herself said that it was the foundation of all her piety. So, you know, they both recognized how love is sacrifice, which is manifested in the Holy Face. You know, we just look and we see the proof of his love for us in his injuries. And, you know, as an extension of the love of God, they both early on, you know, and throughout their lives offered countless sacrifices for the uh, the conversion of sinners. And so, you know, I guess again, it was kind of just one emotion. It was their desire to console God and their desire to help attain mercy for man that, you know, brought them to the Holy Face and, you know, really led them to be models of co-redemption in Christ. And then kind of the next step was they both became victims um, of Christ, you know, kind of assuming his merits, using his merits, kind of like in the spirit of St. Paul. It is no longer I that live, but Christ in me. And, you know, I remember reading how Sister St. Pierre, after communion, would have the practice of annihilating, so to speak, her heart into the Sacred Heart, thereby, thereby destroying all but that which was of Christ. And then kind of similarly, you know, Saint Therese, that statement she had about the Holy Face being the source of all her piety. I think you can, you know, it's not just that it gave her, you know, aids toward mystical objectives, like, you know, I'll talk about in a minute, but that literally it was her piety. You know, she said before that, you know, she wanted to be clothed with God's sanctity, not her own. And so you know, that there were differences technically, though, because Sister St. Pierre was a victim of justice. And, you know, as I said, she was asked to take on the sins of France. Um, and so slowly, and this was all at Christ's request. She did not, you know, think of these things on her own, but she was asked by Christ to mediate in her uh, his his justice and mercy. And so in effect, she, you know, housed the unhoused justice of God. And now Saint Therese, she chose herself as a victim to merciful love. And, you know, she was so bothered that people did not return the love of Christ. And she more and more had the idea of taking on the love of Christ that others had rejected, to the point of eventually just saying, "Well, I'll take it all." And so she housed the unhoused love of Christ, I guess you could say. And so they seem to be very distinct paths to mercy, but manifestly they really were one and the same thing, because Christ reveals in the Revelations that what wounds his heart more than any other crime is blasphemy. And so, if divine justice was being outraged by no other crime, then so was divine love spurned, so to speak, by these same excesses. And it's really made clear in the Revelations that reparation is an act of profound love. And in fact, Christ says that he will return a kiss, which will be a pledge of the eternal union to those who offer him these acts of the heart. Um, but I'm sure there are many that would say, now, wait a minute, Saint Therese herself surely would not see the appeasement of justice as synonymous with consoling, merciful love. I mean, her way, after all, was one of mercy, not justice, of love, not fear, so to speak. And she did have a problem with merits. She her notion of spiritual childhood was such that she did not like the idea of trying to build up merits and present them before God, listed, so to speak. Um, and so for these reasons, people may initially reject this notion that they're so complementary. um, but when you really read, it is true that she had a problem with merits, but not the justice of God. It was more the justice of man, as some people understand it. And she, there's kind of a number of statements she had, and then some of her poetry and prayers and other writings indicate that as far as justice, God's justice, she really had a great regard for that. And she said, all our justice is blemished, but I want to appear before you, meaning God, clothed in your own justice. She said that it is because God is just that he is merciful. And she referred to God's love being robed, I'm sorry, God's justice being clothed in or robed in love, perhaps more so than the other perfections. And again, I kind of go through in the book a number of poems and prayers that indicate her thinking. And it's interesting because, to me, this, clearly just adds to her beauty and her depth, this embracing of the wounded face of Christ and the devotion. But she, uh, the fact that she had such a regard for Sister Saint Pierre, or even the Holy Face devotion, for some reason, after the 1950s, this was not referenced nearly so often. And even material proof, so to speak, like the fact that she always wore a relic of Sister Saint Pierre near her heart. She had a Holy Face relic image in her breviary and pinned one to her bed curtain at the end of her life. And she and her sisters and her father were one of the early members of the Archconfraternity of the Holy Face. And um, uh, you know, I mean, she had the Holy Face on her coat of arms, and there's all these indications that I think, for some reason, even her name, the fact that her full name was of the Child Jesus and the Holy Face, that is usually overlooked. I think that you could say at the time that the Holy Face devotion and knowledge of Sister St. Pierre, especially in a neighboring Carmelite monastery, was such a celebrated given as to literally go without saying. And so, I think it does an injustice to Saint Therese not to focus more on that. And um, so, yeah, I guess, finally, they did share, as I mentioned, kind of these secrets of the Holy Face or veiled treasures, and it's just something that we can see in hindsight. We can kind of look back and recognize in both of them that they they maybe embrace these tools, these mystical tools, and briefly, they're the Holy Face as kind of fulcrum of merciful love. Holy Face is the greatest grace, second to the sacraments. Holy Face as means to spiritual childhood. Um, it's the most distinguished feature that one may take with them on their way to union with God, and that kind of follows along the thinking of Teresa of Avila. It's a very efficacious object of contemplation, as we can witness in Saint Therese, and then there's this transforming return gaze of Christ that's part of that. And finally, as part of the promises, the Holy Face has the power to imprint its likeness on the devotee. And so, again, these are just all ways to embrace the wounded face as like a mediator and guide toward living a truly spiritual life.
Yes, and if we're not looking at that and the power of like what was fueling Saint Therese and how the Holy Face just fed her and nourished her spiritual life, we're getting a very incomplete picture of the saint who's a doctor of the church. So we need that to tell the full story. And now talk about, you mentioned mercy. So then talk about the Divine Mercy devotion. You speak about that too, and how does that relate to the Holy Face?
Okay, I think again at first glance, and even I myself, I know years ago I was like, how do these two relate? Because the Holy Face devotion is so centered on attaining mercy through the appeasement of justice, and the Divine Mercy devotion, it embraces God's love and mercy. It kind of showcases that, and it speaks to the fact that these are means of salvation to men that men are unappreciating and neglecting. And so, again, at first glance, they seem a little bit uh, diverse, but they both actually do involve the appeasement of justice. And that's something I think a lot of people don't realize about the Divine Mercy devotion right off the bat. Someone is still appeasing God's justice, and in Divine Mercy, it's Christ and man. And this devotion gets to, this is where we can use our merits. We are supposed to offer our merits of deeds, words, and prayers to help in the salvation of our brethren. And so that I think is a beautiful way that they are complementary. And um, I think that they have other ways, like for example, the Sacred Heart. They both really are. The Sacred Heart is integral, of course, to both, and it's clearly stated. We talked about the role of the Sacred Heart in the Holy Face devotion. That it's actually through the Sacred Heart that we are making reparation, and in the Divine Mercy, uh, our Lord tells Sister. I'm sorry, yeah, Saint Faustina. Um, to how was it, and embrace his wounded heart, and oh gosh, I'm just now forgetting, but and to make reparation, but it was integral in talking about the heart. The the role of Mary is there in both of them. They both had an understanding of what we would call now St. Louis de Montfort's true devotion to Mary. Sister St. Pierre didn't know about that, but she had that understanding. Um, uh, the they're, I guess, kind of a neat way that they are complementary is in the Holy Face. The object of adoration is of the Holy Face, the face, And that's what we're offering to God. And then in divine mercy, it's interesting. It's the body, blood, soul, and divinity, which, except for the heart, which is it's this tidy complement. And I know that inherent in the body would be the face, but it's not singled out like it is in the Holy Face devotion. So again, it's like this perfect working together, I guess you could say. Um, and they both totally focus on trust and humility. With the Holy Face devotion, we are really encouraged to be humble because the whole point is to realign ourselves with proper fear of God, and which would amount to the opposite of pride, so humility. And in divine mercy, we are told that it is through trust in God and humility that we are to help attain mercy for our brethren. Um, and so, you know, I guess some people might think, well, what are the differences then between the two devotions since they are so complementary? And I guess we could begin again with the objects of the devotion. We talked about the face and the body, blood, soul, and divinity. In the divine mercy, we have the painted image of the body, a resurrected body of Christ, and featuring his heart, pouring forth the graces for man. And in the Holy Face, we have in the Veronica veil image represented like a live face of Christ that is in still need of consolation. And that we are told, can help us obtain the greatest grace second to the sacraments. And that image is actually a miracle three times over, I guess you could say, because obviously when Christ gave the veil back to Veronica, that was a miraculous image that was left. And then uh, we haven't talked about, I think before, others have talked about the miracle of the Vatican, so I won't go into detail, but basically that was in 1849, just months after Sister St. Pierre had passed away. And it was during the time when the Pope was in danger and had to flee to Gaeta because the um, the Second French Revolution had sort of rocked even the Vatican. And anyway, so he asked that the faithful venerate and pray using the exposed Veronica veil image, which as we know, it's very old and it's been through a lot, and just by itself, its features aren't really distinguishable. But during this miracle, there was a 3-hour period in which it became miraculously enlivened, and the canons of the Vatican were ringing the bells for people to come. And anyway, some people did draw images of what they saw, and like I have the images behind me of 2 examples of that. Those are actually the same example, but there are others where maybe the eyes are barely opened or something like that. But so this was the second miracle. And then Venerable Dupont was ultimately given one of these images, and he had a lamp, an oil lamp burning in front of it, just like I have. And he used the oil from that lamp and prayers consistent with the devotion, because at that time the Archconfraternity hadn't been approved. And so anyway, this is how he worked the thousands of miracles, which most people don't even know about. But just kind of a testament to it. Blessed Pope Pius IX had referred to Venerable Dupont as perhaps the greatest miracle worker in church history. And so that's kind of a third way. I guess I think, trying to think where I was going with this. Okay, so more reasons for the differences. Uh, the I mentioned the Mary's role of mercy that is used in both, and understood in both, but it was clearly defined and acknowledged in the Holy Face devotion. The promises are a little different. when compared, they're more alike than any two sets of promises for devotions, but the Holy Face does add the working of marvels, and that the devotion could be used as, quote, the sole means of appeasing the Father in the face of chastisement, most especially concerning the malice of revolutionary men. It does mention the natural elements, and I know like the Divine Mercy mentions storms, but yeah, that one is the Holy Face is kind of singles that out, which is interesting for our time period. It might might be useful. And then, finally, I guess I would just say there's the reason for both in the Divine Mercy, we are told that, we are in a time of mercy and we need to embrace this and use this now because this time will not always be. And in the Holy Face, that we have the singular means of appeasing justice in the face of divine just chastisement, which we have been told by Christ would take the form of the malice of revolutionary men. And I guess in times of justice and in times of mercy, this pattern remains that reparation does need to be made. And um, there are other differences. I guess again, this devotion is centered on the Godhead, and other devotions to Christ's sacred humanity, the blood, wounds, passion, heart, they do lead to that adoration of the Godhead. And I would say that, this promise of the devotion to be a means of bestowing the greatest source of grace second to the sacraments, that may also be very helpful in the case of, if the sacraments are removed, that's another way that this is a devotion that is really crucial for perhaps upcoming times. I mean, we have the unfortunate vision of Leo the 13th, and we have what is disclosed in so many Marian apparitions. And so I think if ever there were a time when the hand of justice might need to be restrained, it's probably nigh. And so anyway, I think that, Christ did reveal this devotion in his words as the most beautiful work under the sun. And I think for all these reasons, that is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we need it more now more than ever. Where do we find the book? How do we get it? How do people contact you and reach out and ask you questions? Because I'm sure after, we hit on a lot, there's going to be a lot of questions.
Sure. Well, I do have a website, holyfacedevotion.org, and there's a link there that you can find the pre-order information for the book. The Sophia promised that in the next week or so, their link will go live, but right now we do at least have the link for Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and I think you can find it in other places too. And so yeah, that'll be out March 19th.
Excellent, excellent. Oh, so thank you very much. Really good. And like we said, we just need it now more than ever. I mean, things are getting worse. I know that it's even like now in the post-COVID world. I don't know if that's gonna mess us up on YouTube now for just saying that word, but you know how it is in that kind of world. And communism, it's like we need to get to the antidote. We need the silver bullet that's going to end it all. And it's like all these natural means that we're trying. It's basically like shooting a BB gun at a freight train when it's a supernatural problem. It requires a supernatural solution, and that's what I think people realize. Once you get you're treating the symptoms sometimes and not the cause. So that's the key. We got to get right at the core of it, and that's God.
That is absolutely true. And I know before we started recording, you were mentioning Fatima, and there's a decent section in the book talking about some of the apparitions in Fatima. And I didn't get to it today. There's so much I didn't get to, of course, but a big part of the book is Mary's role and the unique mystical experiences that kind of help reveal that to the world through Sister Saint Pierre. And anyway, there's a lot to the book, and you and I have talked one other episode about the prefiguring in the Book of Job of the devotion, and
Right.
I talk about Joan of Arc, and just kind of go through. And I guess the last thing I'll say is I try to bring forth some of what was in the original biographies of Sister Saint Pierre that really delved into the full context of the revelations and her mystical experiences. And I love the Golden Arrow, but if for the sake of brevity, it does not go into all that. And I myself was so enlightened when I read like the full accounts. And so I'm trying to bring this to the readers so they don't have to, go back and find these old books unless they want to,
Right.
trying to recap that.
Exactly. So you went through it, so now they don't have to go through it.
That's
So
right.
it's all right there for everyone. So thank you very much for all that you do, Mary Jane, for the church. God
Oh,
bless you and God bless your family. Thank you for joining us again.
thank you. God bless you too. And thank you.
Take care.